Hi, it's me, Brooks. Welcome to Heal This. Today, I have a wonderful guest. Her name is Kristen Bauer. She is a licensed professional counselor in Tennessee and in Illinois. And we actually work in the same office building and see each other passing in the hallways a lot. And not too long ago, she put up a post about shame. And it was also a question out there that she kind of put to everyone and asked about money and shame relating to each other. And so I commented back, and that's how we started talking about this and how we needed to do a podcast about it. I got divorced and in a very short amount of time had about $100,000 in debt, which was awful. I felt awful, felt like an awful person. There was a lot of shame around that. But in order to flip it and to change that situation, I figured out that I am not my debt. And that is what I said to Kristen, is that you are not that, whatever it is, your trauma, your debt, whatever, that's causing so much shame. And so, so tell me a little bit about what you've seen come into your office or your thoughts on all of that.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Hi, Kristen.
Hi.
Yes.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad that we've had a long time coming with us coordinating, and I'm just so, I adore seeing you in the office. So I'm excited to be here and to be on your podcast. So,
Same.
The interesting thing about shame is that shame likes to hide in the dark. And so we don't talk about things that we often have shame around, and then shame can grow. And so I think it's interesting things like we talked about finances. Like, obviously I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not in any way trying to be a financial advisor, but noticing that was one area that was showing up in my office so much and related to people so much of this guilt and shame around finances. And then we're not talking about what that is. We're not talking about numbers. We're not talking about this, these hidden things. And then shame's just growing. Right. Yes. And so I think being able to kind of pull back the curtain, and I think it normalizes it. I think we're able to start to feel more empowered and actually break shame. So anything that wants to stay in the dark, we've got to bring to the light, and then we can break its power and actually live in true freedom. So jumping right in.
That was really beautiful. Yes. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, I think that, we know there's studies that are done all the time about how much, debt people are in or how much people make in our country. We know the numbers. And so, but then when we get in our circles, right, we don't want to talk about it. And it's mainly because, like you said, the thought process, the belief systems, and then the emotions that are attached to all of that cause us to feel small and ashamed of ourselves, that we have the debt, or we don't make very much money. We don't make as much as this guy or that lady or whatever. And so we don't really want to talk about it. And I do think that it is something that if we feel like we need to, if we've attached shame around it, for sure, we need to talk about it, and we need to work through it, because shame wants to stop you from progressing.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. It wants to hold you back, wants to keep you isolated, and wants to tell you that, really it's your fault. It's only you. And just that it has a really strong, really critical narrative that I'd love for us to break.
Yeah. Well, I get really into frequencies, I do a lot of energy stuff, and Dr. David Hawkins, who was a part of the Manhattan Project, did an emotional frequency chart, and the absolute lowest frequency is shame. And it is lower than fear and guilt. And as we kind of pick it apart, we know that it's because it's so within us. It's not exterior. It's, this isn't going to happen to me. I am the problem. I am, awful. I am, those things is what shame is. Yeah. What do people come into your office, and how do they express, this is something that a lot of times we don't even really know we are feeling shame around. And so how can you identify it through maybe the thought processes or the belief systems that, oh, that's shame that you're
Right.
feeling?
Right. I was in my own therapist's office the other day and she said, "Hey, that's shame." And I said, "Oh, you're right. Like, that's why that feels so heavy." Right. And sometimes
Yeah.
we need to do it in community so that then somebody else can kind of name that. And it was just really helpful. So, anyway, I wanted to share that. One thing, too, I want to kind of define, to me, the difference between shame and guilt is often something that we feel towards something that we've done, where shame often turns, like you're saying, inward and says it's something about who I am. Okay? So
Yes.
that voice of shame says, like, yes, I'm not good enough. I missed the mark, right? This is something that there's something wrong with me. Right?
Yes.
And it shows up as a really negative critical self-talk, and it shows up in this heavy, like you're saying, low frequency, like I can feel it in my body. It sort of feels like that punch in the gut of just like, oof, there's something wrong with you. Right? And
Yes.
that's such a lie. It's such a lie.
It's a lie.
It is such a lie.
Yeah.
And I think the more we can name it as being a lie and really recognize, okay, am I going to like partner with that, or am I going to choose to swing to the opposite and say, no, that's not actually how I want to live my life. That's not how I want to talk to myself.
Yes.
And move forward. But yeah, I think I really like that study and talking about it being the lowest frequency, because oftentimes I do a lot of what's called somatic work in my office. And so we'll be talking about something and I'll say, okay, where do you feel that in your body? Okay. And really getting people to understand that connection, which is like where you and I connect on a lot of it.
Yeah.
That connection of like where that's actually at in your body. And so often it's like they feel it in their gut, they feel it in their chest, and this like really heavy, maybe it feels like a brain fog, and just this really heavy feeling that when we often get to process through that and decide to kind of break some of those lies and go a little bit more cognitive with it as well, we can start to rewire the brain so that we actually don't have to continue to believe those lies.
Yes. Well, and if you look at it too, I'm always trying to emphasize that we need to co-collaborate with source, right? Like we are from God. We should be co-collaborating with God, something higher than us, something bigger than us. And the further away we get from that, the worse we're going to feel in here, in our gut and in our heart. And it's because we are, we're vibrating at the frequency of something that is totally not from God, is what I believe, So, and unfortunately, a lot of times we are taught that, if you are doing something that God wants you to do, then you would never feel those things. So then it causes you to even feel lower and lower and lower because you're like, man, what's wrong with me? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Oftentimes I'll talk about, sometimes we have like a feeling about having a feeling, right? And so it's kind of like, oh, okay, well, I now have shame that I have shame, right?
Yes.
Then I have shame. And then it's like, well, now we just have shame all around.
Yeah, we've totally spiraled down.
Yeah. Exactly.
I want to talk about other areas that shame might show up, just because I feel like obviously, we've talked about finances and money, and that's an obvious one, I think. Well, for me, and then a couple of other things that came up while I was thinking about all of this. One is body image, and just the perception of what we look like on the outside. So let's talk about that for a little bit. I do feel like that definitely comes into my office a lot, that feeling of, and shame is not feeling worthy. It's feeling embarrassed. It's feeling not good enough. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I also think it's really triggered by comparison as well, right? Because it's like, if I compare myself to this person or to this thing or to how I feel like I should be, right? I've missed the mark. And I think that's why bringing it to awareness, talking about it with other people, being able to to shine light into these areas that we just like want to keep hidden, then we can recognize it for the lies that it is, and we can start to feel more empowered to do something about it. So yeah, whether it's a narrative around money that says like this, you know, I need to hide how much debt that I have, or this thing feels really hard, or I just don't know how to navigate my money, or I make a lot of money, but I don't manage it well enough. I just need to keep that, like, there's something wrong with me, right?
Right.
To then body image that might say like, this isn't good enough, or I'm not worthy of love because my body doesn't look a certain way, or I must need to change my body in order to then feel loved and accepted, or to get the desired relationship, or to be accepted in a certain social group. And I think that's again where that like kind of gut punch comes that says like, oh, there must be something wrong with me if I just like can't get it together. Right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I see that showing up a lot as like, whether, yes, it might swing to like disordered eating and eating disorders, but it also is like, there's such a cultural narrative around body and body image that I think really just emphasizes that. So yeah, I'm sure you see that show up at your office all the time, right?
Yeah.
As you're physically working with people's bodies and some of the shame that maybe shows up there.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'll have people who won't come in at all because they don't want me to, you know, give them a massage or whatever. But also I think for me, you know, as soon as I hear all of that, I immediately know that it's a self-love issue, that once you love yourself enough, like you know, you are enough and you love yourself just deeply. It just, those things don't matter. I don't really care what other people think about my body. I love my body. I'm grateful it works every day. So that's kind of where I started when I was struggling with what I look like physically. You know, I would tell my body all the time, I'm so grateful for you. I'm grateful you work. I'm grateful that, you know, I made humans, you know, in my body. Like, that's freaking amazing, you know? So, just trying to love myself and love my body, trying to bring that out. And something you said earlier about talking about finances. Yeah. One of the ways that I was navigating that is, you know, I had the 4 kids after the divorce and they didn't have a clue how much things cost, how much debt I was in, like what I had to make to make that work. But once I sat them down and we talked about it and I said, here are the bills, you know, and this is how much money that we have to make to live in this house and this county and, you know, for this education, you know, then they started to say, we get it, Mom. Okay. You know, how can we help? What can we do? And it was empowering. It wasn't something you know, and then I would keep up with them. I'm like, okay, I've paid down the debt this much and this is how much, you know, we have to go. And it's really me.
You can celebrate it.
Yes, but it's like, and that's why I'm not here, you know, I'm working, you know, or whatever, like trying to help them understand, and communication is key, and trying to, like you said, bring it out of the dark and talk about it.
Right. Oh, that's so good. I love the way that you brought it out. But you also, sometimes I hear when people say, okay, the voice of shame is really loud in my life and there's a lot of negative self-talk. So let me just swing to almost this like toxic positivity that then says like, oh, it's fine. Like, I just actually won't talk to myself that way. I'm going to swing to this other like fluffy positive statement. And that's not real either. All right. That's actually avoidance, right? Or if we're like, okay, I have shame about debt, so I'm just going to spend everything anyway because I just don't want to think about. I don't want to talk to myself in a negative way, so I'll just go spend, right? Which, I mean, everyone's on their own journey. There's absolutely no judgment around it. And also, what you did, something really sweet, is like you said, no, hold on a second. There's still accountability. There's still something that like I can start to feel empowered because I brought these things to the light, and then you're walking it out, right? And there's something sweet that it sounds like really built your confidence in an amazing way that then is like, okay, I'm no longer going to listen to that voice of shame. And I'm going to keep walking it out, and I'm going to celebrate my successes along the way, and you're doing the hard work. And like,
Yep.
it probably wasn't fun all the time.
There were lots of days it wasn't fun.
It was hard.
It was very hard.
Exactly. Yeah. But you walked it out. And I think that is, I often see people swing to this other way, and I'm like, oh, but that's actually just avoiding it. That's not actually dealing with it either. So how can we create some space for ourselves to say, okay, this is hard, but I'm going to like walk it out day by day, and I'm going to have vision for this life of like freedom that I want that isn't surrounded by shame. And here's how I'm going to do that. So whether that's with finances, whether that's with like body image or health or relationships or any other topics that can show up. So
yeah. No, I love all that. And as far as the relationship part goes, and then I'm going to come back and talk about some of those other things again. But the other thing that I brought up when we were talking is a lot of times when you are in a relationship where there's either abuse happening, and I don't just mean, when I say abuse, I don't just mean somebody's physically harming you. I mean, there are abuses all across the board, anyone trying to take away your power. So that could be financially, that could be verbal abuse, but even all the way down to young individuals in school being bullied, right? There's usually the person that is on the receiving end of the abuse has all the shame, because they are trying to hide again in the dark that this is happening to them.
Yeah.
And so I can just say that it feels really embarrassing to say that somebody has treated you in a way that you don't deserve to be treated, and you know it. And so saying something, coming out and saying, this is happening to me, once you give it life, right? And you say, this is what's happening to me, and it comes out of the dark, other people can say, yeah, that's not okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then when they speak into that, it one brings you courage, but it also, I think oftentimes we don't want to share out loud in that way, because we might even have this gut that says like, oh, I know that this isn't okay, but I'm scared of like what would actually happen if I share this with somebody. Right?
Yeah.
And that's terrifying. It's scary, right? But it's also scary in the space like where you're at the same time. And I obviously want to be really sensitive talking about this. But as we bring that to the light, we can get support around us and then start to walk out like whatever that healing might look like and safety might look like. And
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because there's going to be repercussions to speaking about it. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, one, we can always start with the healing part, but then what do we do next? Right.
Yeah. There's a lot of uncertainty in that. Right.
Yes.
So then shame says, stay quiet. Right. Yeah. Because there's uncertainty that shows up. Right. Right.
Yeah. Because so then in that case, the uncertainty is way better than staying stuck. Yeah. But a lot of times nobody's going to tell you that. And it's terrifying to think about, well, then what does that mean? And when you play it out in your head, a lot of times we don't know the answers because we've put the cart in front of the horse at that point. Then, it's basically you having to do it one step at a time, going, okay, I have to bring it into the light, feel empowered, feel freedom, feel encouraged, and then go from there, because that's a totally different vibration than coming from a place of shame.
Yes. I've kind of coined this with my clients, this term called time traveling, and say that unless you and I have, gone kind of back to the future style and we have a time travel machine, our physical body is always in the present moment. Right. And so as each moment goes by, our physical body is moving along in that present moment with us. However, how often is our mind actually focused on the here and now? Very rarely, right? Instead, we often might time travel to the future. And so in this case, we're talking about uncertainty and fears and all the things that like could go wrong and not sure what that future might hold. But then it also might time travel to the past, right? And that's also a lot of where that shame might show up too, right? And so most of the time we're kind of fluctuating from the past and the future. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Like we want to grow, so we want to be able to heal from the past. We want to be able to plan and dream to move forward. But when we're spending the majority of our time there, a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, a lot of shame can show up, right? So I think kind of focusing in on what's actually happening right here and right now. What do I need to do in order to support myself here and now? And how can I move through whatever fears and stuff are showing up in this moment, rather than the anticipation of that like uncertainty moving forward, right?
Yes. Yeah. No, it's beautiful. That's exactly what's happening when you're manifesting. So a lot of times people don't really understand, it's like they don't really know how to do it because they think too much. They think too much about, like you said, the future. Well, then if I do that, then this, and then all of a sudden the bridge between now and what you're trying to call in is just crumbling in the middle because you can't actually live in the vibration of what you're trying to call in because you're projecting fear. You're projecting, now you're doing that. And if you go back to the past, that's just confirming it over and over and over again. That's how you're in the space that you're in.
Right.
So it's actually in one of the tools that I used a lot was when I would feel myself slipping into that little fear spot, I would say, but what if it actually turned out to be magical and amazing? And what if I had the life that I really, really wanted? It would feel like this instead of like, so, just having to do that. And now I remember what I was going to say when you said that people are overly, the toxic positivity, right? For me, that is the fake it till you make it. And you can't fake it till you make it because your cells know you're faking it.
Yeah.
And what we're going for is you truly believing that you are worthy.
Yeah.
And that is a practice. And that is you practice your practice, right? You do it a little bit every day just for a little, applying it to something else then fine. If you have a really hard time understanding that, hey, you can get out of debt or you have a beautiful physical body and it's working or, you don't know how to get out of this situation in this relationship or whatever, then apply it to something that is a little easier to believe.
Right.
And then shift it for just a moment and say, what if I felt that way about this situation?
Yes. Yeah.
And
it's good. Yeah. One of the things I was like, jumping at, as you said, make it. So there's something called behavioral activation in the psychology world that I think is actually like almost a better version of a fake it till you make it. So, we think about fake it till you make it as that's like very much out of alignment with like who we really are. And we're kind of trying to be somebody that we're not. And that kind of covers up that shame. Right. But I actually like to think about who would I be? How would I be in this situation right now if I wasn't flooded with shame? If I was actually my like true self, my most aligned, most confident self, like who would I be in that moment? Well, I would probably stand a little taller. I might feel more engaged. I might make more eye contact. I might like have a different tone of voice. Well, that's actually my real self, right? That's not me flooded with this negative self-talk, with this shame. And so if we're going to fake it till you make it, let's fake it to be our actual like real self if we weren't flooded with that shame. Right? So it's like act as though we were actually feeling more like ourselves. Right? And it's a little twist on that, right?
Yes.
but I really like that because it's like, okay, I'm actually going to walk this out if I was actually feeling like I could truly feel, right? Like I actually
like you're meant to feel.
Yes. Yeah. And because I don't want to believe those lies anymore, right? Like we don't want to sit in shame. So if I actually can just start to have that body language, to make that eye contact, to start to walk it out, to manage my money as though I truly felt confident in that, right? Learn the things, get empowered, walk it out as though you had success in your money. Don't listen to the narratives in the past, right? Or have the body image, take care of your body in the way of which like your most confident self would take care of your body, right? Build your relationships, like have the negative self-talk, Yeah. One thing that I want to talk about as far as, which is along those lines, but kind of shifting a little bit, that keeps coming up is when we talk about negative self-talk, or even when you talked about abuse, like sometimes the way that we talk to ourselves is actually pretty abusive, right?
Yeah, it is, for sure.
That's so much, again, of this like narrative of shame, like the negative self-talk. So
absolutely.
think about like, Brooks, if I were to walk around with you all day long, 24/7, and I were to talk to you the way that maybe sometimes you would talk to yourself in your hardest
I would be like,
day.
get lost.
Yeah, exactly. You wouldn't really want to spend any time with me, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, like we wouldn't want to spend any time with the people that are talking to ourselves that way, right? Like I would never let somebody talk to me in the same way I talk to myself.
That's right. Yeah.
So why do I get to talk to myself that way?
Yes. I don't. Right. Well, and then to take that a step further, because working with relationships with people, I'm like, if you're talking to yourself that way and you feel that way about yourself, you are not allowing anyone else to feel a way about you that's better or more, because you don't feel that way about yourself.
Right. Right.
And
like so allow that in, right? Like I might allow you to actually talk to me poorly if I'm talking to myself that way all the time, because I'm going to believe that, right?
Yes. Yes.
But if I start to say, no, I'm not talking to myself that way anymore. Right?
That's right.
I don't talk. And I had this aha moment a few years ago where I actually started to say that to myself. Like, I'm not talking to myself that way anymore.
Yeah.
No. And so when that little negative thought shows up, can I swear on here? Well, you can bleep me out if not.
Yeah, no, you can't. Go for it.
There's a podcast that I listened to a while ago that talked about it as our inner asshole. And you can bleep that out if you need to.
No,
but
I'm good.
I like it because it's jarring enough, right? That it's like, oh, I don't talk to myself that way. Like, I don't, that tone of voice, that maybe like self-deprecating, that sarcasm, that really critical voice. Like, so when that thought will show up, I'll actually like stop myself in my tracks now and say, no, I don't talk to myself that way.
That's
reading that, how would you actually want to talk to yourself? And then I'll like say it in a different way that might be more of like that accountability, or okay, we can do this better. All right, let's figure it out. Like we can move forward from there, right?
I love it. Well, so the first step is people just are not aware. Like they're not. That's why they're stuck.
Yeah.
That's why they're coming in to see us, right? You know, as because they're stuck. And we're all going to have moments of being stuck, even when we're, you know, moving forward and practicing the practice and walking through it. Like you're saying, we're going to have things that we hit and we're like, what is this? And the key is to really listen to, you know, the conversations we're having around it in our head, because the thoughts are attached to the belief systems, which are the emotions that we're vibrating at, which is calling it in constantly. Anyway, those are the things, right? All that, right? We don't do it perfectly every single time. And even once we start the practice, you know, we're going to have moments, and don't beat yourself up. Just have grace for yourself, just like you would for a friend, just like you were saying. And that is exactly how you get through those moments where, you know, you're like, I'm going to do that better next time. Yeah. I've had some moments where I'm like, why do I keep doing that? And then I have a breakdown around it, because I'm like, whoa, this goes back really far. And to some times where, and I couldn't even talk about it in the moment once I discovered it, because I would just cry, because I'm like, wow, this is big. You know, maybe, one of the things that just happened was me discovering why I like to procrastinate to the very last minute to get ready for work. And, it's just because I wasn't in control of my time all of the time before. My time was controlled by others, you know? And so it was like, it's like a little rebellion I was having. But when I discovered it, I couldn't talk, because I was like, wow, I didn't even really see it that way all the way at the time, but I do now. So anyway, you have to like think about, go within and really listen and think about it before you before you don't really, you have to stop and think about it and ask yourself the questions.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I really believe that it's hard to make any meaningful change without a level of awareness. And so
yes.
sometimes that level of awareness is kind of, how you can be in a room and there can be background music playing and we don't actually, like we don't even notice that it's there, right?
Yes.
Until all of a sudden someone will say something and you're like, oh, there was music playing this whole time, right?
Right.
Sometimes that's kind of what our like unconscious or even just our negative self-talk or those like heavier emotions, sometimes it's just background noise because it's been there for so long.
Yes.
And we start to tune into it, then we realize, ooh, like that was some really mean negative self-talk, or
yes.
like I've actually been carrying this really heavy thing and didn't really even recognize how that's impacting all of these other areas. Right?
For sure. Well, and then to shift it, right? Because then that's the next part. Like we'll do the emotion code on people. I do, work with clients. One of the things I wanted to tell you that, obviously shame comes up all the time. Fear comes up a lot. But one of the things that comes up not as often is self-abuse. And a lot of times when it comes up, people will go, and I'm like, it's okay. It doesn't mean like you're physically hurting yourself. It means you are like spiritual energy hurting yourself because you are talking to yourself in negative thought patterns, right? And belief systems, old stuff that needs to go away. And you need to rewrite that for yourself. But then the next step, of course, I'm like, I can clear this. We can move through this, but you do the work, and the work is changing those. And that is so hard. And I know that from personal, changing. But one of the things I tell people is, of course, you have to be aware and you have to hear what's coming in, right? Oh, I'm thinking this about this situation.
Right.
And I say, you need to, in that moment, say, stop. Stop. Yes. I don't believe that. And don't just think it, say it out loud, like have power in it and say, no, I don't think that. I can do this. I am a powerful being, and I love myself. And if I don't know how to do it, I'm going to go figure it out. And I am smart enough to do that. Like
you have
carry it out.
Yeah, exactly. I really love learning about the science of the brain because I actually think it brings so much hope. And there's a concept called neuroplasticity, which is our brain's ability to change, right?
Yes.
And so when somebody comes in and they go, this is just always how I am. Like I just talk to myself this way, and this is just like who I am and what I've been, right? I just like have this anxiety, depression, or I just have these things and like this is just it, right? And I said, that doesn't sound like hope to me. Like that doesn't sound empowered to me. Let's figure out like actually some of the science behind like your brain can change, right? And so we can do things like stop, like I don't talk to myself that way anymore. And it actually creates new pathways in our brain, and you can actually see on brain scans how your brain starts to change. And it's fascinating, right?
I know.
The way that, that's what we just connect on so much. The way that like the mind and the body, the emotions are also tied together is amazing. It's beautiful.
Yeah. And I've shared this a lot, and it's one of the most useful pictures in my mind. So you just picture yourself walking up to a field of grass, and the grass is like this high, right? And when I was a kid, I lived on a bunch of acres, and we literally had a field that was of grass of like that high. So I can remember that. But if you were walking to like, your friend's house and you walked through that, but you walked through it 100 times, that path would be there. It would be, that grass would be down. You wouldn't touch any of the other grass coming. But as soon as you make a new neural pathway, you have to go through that, and it's going to be painful. I mean, it scratches you. Yes. Yeah. There's lots of resistance, you have to, and you don't really know where you're going. You can't see. And so again, there's trust. There's the ability of the trust of knowing that your body knows what to do, right? And so it's creating that new neural pathway, but also you are going to come out to the other end if you are focusing on the vibration of what it is you want. Not, and and that's where the practice comes, right? Like, love. I don't know how to love myself. Do you know how to love your pets? Do you have children? Do you have nieces and nephews? Who do you love? What do you love? Like, focus on that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the beauty of not doing it alone is that sometimes we, like, in bringing these things out into the light rather than the darkness is like, I might not always believe in myself, but I'm going to surround myself with people who are going to believe in me when I forget. Right. And so being able to say, like, okay, this feels really hard. I'm facing this resistance. I'm trying to talk to myself different. I'm trying to change the way that my brain is responding to things. But you can't do that alone all the time. Like, I just don't believe we were created to do this alone.
No,
Right.
me
And
either.
so
We're not supposed to do
surrounding
it alone.
yourself with people, who are going to believe in you when you don't believe in yourself in that moment, when when you're feeling discouraged, when you keep facing that resistance and it's just overwhelming. Right. Then putting like people in your life that you can say, hey, here's the really vulnerable thing. Right. And all the research on shame talks about vulnerability is the way to break that. Right.
Yes.
And so saying, here's what I'm trying to do. This is really hard. Help me. Right.
Yes.
Is amazing.
Yeah. And if you don't have someone close to you, that's why we can help you too.
That's why we're here. Yeah.
That's why we're here, like we'll be a big cheerleader for you,
Yeah.
and we can celebrate the little tiny wins. Cause I know that it's not all about the big wins, it's about the everyday wins. Like, wow, 80% of the time I talked to myself good today. I was positive, there were those little moments where they slipped in. And, I think when I tuned into the background music, I heard myself saying, I can't do it. I'm not good enough, those things. And now when I tune in, I'm like, I love my life. I'm so happy. And I just, I'm so grateful, and gratitude is a huge, I call it like the super booster, if you can just find the things that you can be grateful for.
Right.
And a lot of times they're really small things that just add up. They don't have to be ginormous, but,
right. Yeah. People come in and say to me like, oh, I have a gratitude practice. I say, okay, I'm thankful for my job. I'm thankful for my house. I'm thankful for this. I'm like, okay, well, how'd that go for you? Did that actually shift something for you? Okay. Those are all amazing things, but like, get really specific, like get really in the deep about like, okay, what about your job are you thankful for today? And don't repeat it the next day. Like, get so detailed with it that you can actually feel so much more grounded in, okay, I'm actually grateful. And no matter what darkness we're facing, there are things that we have to like dig down deep and find what things we feel gratitude for. Right. And again, comparison to other people really wants to like cloud our gratitude. Right? So turning down that noise, coming back to like, okay, what do I actually have to feel gratitude for about today? And it's a practice that like, sometimes it takes everything in us to say, here are the things that I feel grateful for. Here are the specific. For sure. And that can, again, be a new thought that, if we're trying to challenge those thoughts, we don't want to talk to ourselves in the negative way anymore. Okay, then instead, let me replace that with a thought that's really aware of the present around me, right? Yes. That focuses on the things that I am grateful for. And then we keep meditating on those things. And that's part of how, right?
Yes. Yeah, I was thinking as you were saying that you want to make it live, right? Like, it's not like the repeating of the same things is like having a plastic plant over there versus like something that you're feeding every day and nourishing that's live. Yeah. And one of the ways you can do that is just, again, you're being more present, you're being more aware of the right now. And people come into our lives every day. If you go out to dinner or if someone holds the door open for you, oh, I'm so grateful for you. Thank you. Just being more grateful and having more gratitude in the moment will totally shift that. And because what will happen is people will start to say to you, oh, thank you. I'm grateful. I appreciate you. And then you're like, well, someone appreciates me, and then it's the spiral up instead of the spiral down. So, yeah.
Amazing.
So no more shame. We got to talk about it. We got to, bring it out into the light and to really identify what it is you're feeling. Start to really ask yourself the questions. Yeah. What's going on? What am I feeling right now? Where does it come from? Yeah. And then, yes, if you want to get a hold of Kristen, what are some ways that people can find you?
Yes, so you can find me on Instagram at kristenbauerlcpc. It's licensed professional counselor.
Nice.
Or you can find me on my website. My practice is called Lenora Clinical Group, and that's lenoraclinicalgroup.com. So,
Nice.
as a side note, Lenora is my middle name, and it means light. Light.
Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah, so
I
full
love that.
circle. Uh-huh.
Oh,
Yeah, so it felt really
that's
fitting to
awesome.
name my business after that.
I love that. I didn't
So
know
yeah,
that,
we're
so
just
that's
a few
awesome.
doors down from you. They can find me.
That's right.
Yeah. Mhm.
Well, I appreciate you being here today, and I thank you for taking the time. And I always love talking to you. So
Same to you.
have a
Thank
good
you.
one. Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me on.